Hello, everybody. We're back. Bar Down Beauties, episode 19, presented by SodaStick.com. How's everybody feeling out there? You guys good?
I mean, the weather's warm, so that's a plus. That's kind of the one thing I'm hanging on to at this point is like I'm letting the weather dictate my mood for the rest of quarantine. I'm like, if it's nice out, we're feeling good. If it's like snowing and cold, we're not okay.
100%. I mean, I think I took out the patio set, so I'm feeling optimistic. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that maybe the snow is done.
I've been mixing some tank tops into my quarantine wardrobe. So
shorts. I'm a big shorts gal. Give me shorts all day.
I'm becoming an old man where I'm starting to do like the random yard work and seeding and on. And
do you want to get a garden going? Yeah,
I have a garden going. I'm waiting for the last freeze, and then I'm going to put into cherry tomatoes and cucumbers. I'm so cool.
Make us some salsa. We'll start selling Bar Down Beauty salsa. That's
we made bruschetta last year, so.
Yum, the best.
Or guacamole. I could go for some guac.
Guys, this is what Bar Down Beauties has turned into. But for the record, we are now also cooks and chefs. We're
cooking with the Beauts. You all are screwed. I can't cook for shit.
Growing vegetables in your backyard garden.
Yeah, how to. Maybe we'll get a how-to video and Fred can show us how it's done. I like it. We do have sports to talk about, though, if we want to do that. Do you guys want to talk hockey or anything?
Nah, let's stick with the gardening stuff.
I know.
We actually talk about sports on the show anymore?
We could turn gardening into talk about it like we're talking hockey, like do a play-by-play of Fred. Like, oh, look at Neat goes 5-hole with those carrots or whatever. I don't know. Something
if we would do that, though, I have to go full dad mode and break out like the Nike Air white shoes with a white
jorts. I need jorts. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Tucking my t-shirt.
Hey, content is king, baby.
Content all day. No, we had another great show for you. Natalie Darwitz, the queen of hockey, actually just the badass. She said she kind of got teased a little bit for being called the queen of hockey, so we apologize. But she is. There's really no better player. I'm not even going to say female player. Like there's very few players out there that have accomplished everything that she has. And we're so lucky that she's here in Minnesota and doing a lot, helping Hamlin, coaching that Division III women's team there out of Tria. So a lot of really, really great stuff from her coming up in our guest segment.
Yeah, her resume is pretty killer, so she's got a lot of fun stories for us, and we kind of talk about the state of women's hockey and hockey in general. So, yeah, fun content, and happy to have her on the podcast. She was someone we were talking about for a while of trying to get on, and we finally got her.
Yeah, no, it was great. Speaking of women's hockey, I mean, a little bit of excitement there. The NWHL expanding to Toronto. Alexis, obviously big in your world there. What does that mean for the NWHL, as you know, and how does that kind of shake things up? I mean, again, it's exciting. It's growing the game, and it means that there's enough promise there to have it in Canada.
Well, I mean, we knew it was probably going to come at some point, not necessarily Toronto specifically. That news that city was being looked at just came out within the last couple of weeks, but expansion was inevitable, and a lot of different cities were talked about. A lot of fans were throwing out ideas of where they wanted to see the teams expanded to, but Toronto was chosen, and I think that is probably one of the better options they could have chosen. There was some, like Minnesota's the only Midwestern team, so another Midwestern team would have been a great option. Some people talked about Seattle with the NHL expanding there, but I think a Canadian team is great because you obviously had the CWHL that folded a year or two ago, and you lost those teams, you lost those players, and kind of there was a little bit of chaos there, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, the CWHL folded. What does that mean for the NWHL? And there was a little bit of concern, and so I'm really happy that they're bringing hockey back to a Canadian market. Obviously, Toronto is huge in the NHL as a hockey market, so I'm really excited to see an NWHL team there because I really do think that is a great city for a team to thrive in just because they love their hockey there. It's kind of like Minnesota. You put a team there, they're going to watch it just because they love hockey. They already have 5 players signed. And I think 3 of them were from the PWHPA. So they brought in a couple of those players, which was really nice to see. And then a couple other players as well. So they've got 5 players. They've got women kind of leading the whole thing, which is really awesome to see. The resumes on those women were great. And it was just nice to see my timeline flooded with NWHL news. We had the WNBA draft. What was that? Last week? Yeah, I'm losing track of time.
I know.
And then we've got the NFL draft going on right now. So this was another fun, current sporting thing happening to flood the timeline with instead of just replays and reminiscing on old things. So it was really fun to see people be excited about that and to add a 6th team to the NWHL. So I'm excited for the next season and to see what that team brings and how new rivalries might come up. But really, really good news for the NWHL and really excited to see how the next season goes.
My only criticism, and I will not criticize a lot of things ever, everything's over on the East Coast. Like, let's get another team kind of, and Minnesota's the only team that's here and they're traveling out there. It'd be nice to get some variety in there and some locations of, obviously I understand, certain reasons that you do have it. And I do think it's great that it's in Canada. And like you said, Toronto's such a hockey hotbed. But I'm excited to have more teams have it come this way a little bit.
I know Detroit is a city that people keep throwing out there.
Yeah.
I think a Detroit team would do really well. Chicago would do great. So yeah, there's some good options. And I know that, hopefully it's not too long before more teams are added. But a lot of people are begging for the Midwest too, Jesse, because they want some more local teams for the Whitecaps to be able to play against. So we'll see. But Toronto's a great start and really exciting to see that news.
What city do you think is the most deserving to get them one?
I think Minnesota was one. They got that one. Yep.
That one, right? But what's the next hotbed? What's the next place? Or what would be the next natural rival for the Whitecaps?
See, I think I would like Chicago. I'll jump in and say
Chicago would be good.
So they have a summer league that's like the Beauty League, but they let female players play in theirs, which is really cool. Like I think Kendall Coyne actually is from Chicago too. So you look at some of those players that they also breed a solid amount of talent in Chicago. So I think I would love to see that location first before any, and again, it's Midwest. Plus, if you, as the NHL hopefully gets more involved in the NWHL, then you look at the Wild Blackhawks rivalry and maybe have something similar on the women's level. So I think that would be my bet. That would be my vote.
I was going to say that's definitely one of them. And for that exact reason, I think the natural rivalry in the NHL would carry over into the NWHL, and you'd see kind of that intense gameplay between those two teams. And because Chicago has an NHL team, I think an NWHL team would do well because they're used to hockey there. I do have another suggestion that's a little crazy, but I've heard other people talk about it too, so maybe it's not that wild, but either like a Wisconsin or a North Dakota team, because they don't have an NHL hockey team. And so maybe bringing the NWHL there would really get any hockey fans in that area to just kind of cling on to that team because they don't have NHL hockey.
And North Dakota doesn't have a women's college team anymore either. So I think that could be a good filler a void as well.
Exactly. And they love their college sports there. So I think a sports team, professional sports team would do well there. Wisconsin, I think especially just because think about how strong that rivalry is in college hockey with both men's and women's between the Gophers and the Badgers and even like St. Cloud and Wisconsin teams. So I really think that an NWHL team might be a really fun rivalry there for the Whitecaps and kind of start that Midwest spread of NWHL teams. But I know a lot of people are talking about Midwest as a location. So yeah, Fred, I think there's a lot of good options, and it just depends on, do you want to put it in a state that doesn't have a pro hockey team already? Do you want to add it to one that does and see if you can kind of get those to mesh? Because a lot of things too is like, the NHL team helping out the NWHL team get, put out promotion and supporting them. And think about what the Wild do for the Whitecaps, having them do Let's Play Hockey stuff and just the way they tweet at each other. And so having that NHL team already does help a lot of these teams just get that support out there. But it might not be a bad idea to throw an NWHL team in a state and city that doesn't have a pro hockey team and see how that would go. So I think there's a lot of good options.
I don't think there's a bad option, really.
No.
I mean, really, there's still, you have 6 teams now. There's so much room to grow in so many different areas that I think it could very well be successful. I think even in California, again, you mentioned the NHL teams, the amount of NHL teams that are out there. Why not give that a shot? Or hook onto the new expansions in Seattle and even in Vegas maybe, and consider that and the help that can lift you up. Yes, Fred.
With the NWHL, how many players that are signing with these teams are actual local players? And does that actually matter to building up a team? Or is it a bunch of people that are actually bringing in free agents from around the country? Because my point is like, okay, does it have to be a very strong local hockey base that has a lot of ranks and a lot of players that they can actually draw from to build a team?
I think yes and no. I think it kind of depends on the state of the league at the time they expand to that location. I mean, I think if you've got, if you just say 5 years from now, they want to add another team. Hopefully there's another one added before them, but just say it's at that point and players are getting paid a little bit more at that point. Let's just say, so maybe it's easier then to draw players from out of that state to come and play there because they know they'll make the money and whatever. But if it's still at the point it's at now where it's like most of these players, if not all of them, have other jobs and stuff like that to pay the bills, they might have a harder time drawing people not from that area to come play there just because they're like, well, is it worth my time? So I think it really depends on when that place gets the team, kind of where the state of the league is at the time. And that's the thing with the league being so young, there is so many questions because you can plan ahead as much as you want, but because it's so young, it's changing so quickly, and teams could be added quickly. So there's a lot of question marks behind some of those things like what you're asking, Fred. And I think there's answers now, but those could be different answers in, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So
yeah, fair.
I want to keep talking a little bit more about the NWHL. Alexis, you had mentioned there's a lot of players that have been re-signing or signing up with teams. Walk us through that and some of the key signings that maybe people don't know about.
Yeah, so I would say, so there's 6 teams with the Toronto team, which is still unnamed and all of that. And they're asking fans to kind of put their input in on what they want the logo to look like, the team name. So that's kind of cool that fans get a chance to be a part of that. But so with the Toronto team, there's 6 teams. And I would say every team has about 4 or 5 official signings right now for next year. Actually, Minnesota is the only team who is the team that has the least amount of signings. They only have 1 right now. It just so happens to be Ali Thunstrom, which is a pretty damn good signing if you ask me. But they've got a lot of work to do as far as seeing which players are going to want to return, if they're going to bring anybody new on board. And now with the Toronto team, that adds a whole mix in too, because some of these players might say, well, hey, I want to maybe play there instead, or, it just might change the makeup and decisions of some of these players deciding to re-sign and where they want to re-sign. So, the Whitecaps have the least amount of signings right now, but again, Ali Thunstrom is probably one of the most important ones you could lock down for the next season.
She's kind of good. And she's a Beaut, right? She's an official Beaut, so we love her.
So she announced her signing or her re-signing, I think 2 weeks ago now. Time is all a blur at this point, but today we're recording on Friday. So as of today, 2 new players re-signed. MJ Pelletier for the Buffalo Beauts, who a lot of people are saying she's going to be defender of the year next year. She's small. She's very, very tiny. She's probably like 5'4". I mean, she's not very big for a defender, but she is damn talented. So they're going to be really lucky to have her back on board. And then the other signing today was Kaylee Fratkin of the Boston Pride, who is the team the Whitecaps are waiting to play in that championship game here whenever hockey resumes. Also another very strong signing for them. So Elena Orlando re-signed here within the last week. There's been some really strong signings here for these teams as this offseason kind of gets sorted out, or whatever you want to call it, a pseudo offseason, as we wait to have one game still played. And I do think that game, once that game is played, will determine a lot of players who are on the Whitecaps and the Pride as far as do they want to resign, where do they see the future of that team. So I think there's still some players who are maybe holding out to see how the season finishes up before they want to resign.
So I'm not as familiar with the NWHL. Yeah. I've always been very honest. I can only hold so much hockey knowledge, right? Or follow so much. So are they on a year-to-year contract then? So it's every year that a team has to basically kind of not rebuild, but remake itself a lot of times?
Yeah, essentially, because they get paid. It's not like where, in the NHL, you're signing 5-year deals for $7 million, or whatever you want to call it. It's on a much smaller scale. And then they've got the draft coming up. They just announced yesterday or 2 days ago that they're doing the draft next week. So a little chaotic as far as that announcement goes, but that's going to play into seeing how these teams build and which players want to re-sign. It's kind of a slow process because it's basically every player has to say, okay, am I coming back? Am I not coming back? How is it going to work? Mm-hmm. And then last year when everything happened with the PWHPA, a lot of the teams looked different coming into this year. So this year was kind of the first year with a lot of these rosters. I mean, on our broadcast, as we got into the playoffs and stuff, especially, we started looking at, like last year, this team was completely different. Some teams only had 1 or 2 of the same players this year that they did last year. So it's been the last year or so has been kind of crazy as far as who's going to be on the team, who's going to re-sign. Now you bring Toronto in. We've got the draft in a week. So I think in the next week or 2, you're going to see an increase in signings. But so far I would say there's probably been maybe 20 or so people who've re-signed. So pretty exciting stuff. And again, that's fun because we're getting emails almost every day about this person re-signed and this and that. It's fun, that current hockey news that we're lacking so much. It's really nice to see the emails from the league announcing some of this stuff. So we may have not had much going on in the NHL right now, but the NWHL has been very busy, and that's really fun to see.
There has been a little bit of NHL news, I'm sure, as most of you have already seen, and take the stock that you want in it. But Gary Bettman did say that they are no longer considering neutral sites. I believe we talked about that last week, how Grand Forks was in the running. And of course, we love that because of the proximity here. But it's no longer neutral sites. They will look at NHL cities, Minnesota apparently being one of those choices for the Central Division games here. Which would be great. It would be played with no fans. Actually, and I had spoken with a friend who works for an NHL team, and she had mentioned prior to the full-on shutdown that media actually was going to be very limited too, as far as who could come, which does make sense. A bummer for me because I want to experience a game with no fans. Again, I think that sounds insane, but I get it, right? It would have to be so much protection for players and people that need to be there, again, essential workers, I would imagine. You could argue media obviously is essential, but can you watch the game from home? Of course. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that would be interesting. Again, take it for what it's worth. The plan would be June to restart, which sounds a little crazy. I mean, with all the unknowns and as we keep talking about, there is a long ass list of things that need to happen in order for
and
anything
the list keeps
to
getting
move
longer,
forward.
not shorter. Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy. So that's your latest NHL news. Again, don't hold your breath for it. Don't need you to go blue in the face. Like, it would be great. And I do think Minnesota probably is a very logical location. I know everyone, the NHL loves the XL. It's a newer facility. It's a big facility. They know fans will come, or there would be no fans, would there?
Nope.
That's
no,
just who cares? Why start the season?
Fans will watch from home.
Fans will watch. Yeah, you can't even watch at a bar. Like, oh God. So anyway, that's where we're at.
That's the news.
That's the news.
We've got
you guys will not be able to watch the games. You'll have all the teams and games played here, but you can't watch them, so don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
Contrary to what Jesse said, you will not be able to go to the game.
You'll not be able to go to the game.
Breaking news, Bardown Beauties announces fans will attend NHL games this summer.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to get your hopes up.
I'm really curious, where the line is going to be for, essential fans at these games. Would they have, Nordy in attendance?
Honestly,
running up and down, banging his drum.
What's he doing? Right.
Just put me in a section all by myself. I'll take care of everything. I'll get the booze, the cheers.
Do you do the
I say you do survival of the fittest.
You
do 10 fans a section, and then you just start booting them as the game goes on, and whoever is last gets to go to the next game too. It needs to be some kind of
So be glad
how do you choose?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm in.
I don't know how, if you do say, okay, fans can come, what is it? You get literally 10 tickets? Who are you gonna...
Don't even think about bringing those bags in. Goddamn, no. That's least of your issues now.
The only way I can ever see
articles of clothing.
The only way I can see them ever letting fans back in at all would be they only sell out a third of the attendance. And everybody has to be appropriately spaced.
But
plus, they all have to wear masks at all times.
Yeah. See, and again, it's not even the proximity of people, right? It's the touching of everything. So you're now you're having...
How long would it take to disinfect the entire arena?
Yeah, right.
I know they did not disinfect that arena at the end of the night.
Just know that. Just do what are those things that you use to clean your house with the really strong spray? Oh my gosh. Fred, you're a dad. You were just talking about doing yard work.
I want to see the person that doesn't clean actually figure this out.
Well,
I was lice? What are you talking about?
Shots fired, but true. They basically where you the big machine and it's and you spray the whole house. I'm going on a tangent. It's not important.
Vacuum?
No, not a vacuum.
What?
It sprays. It doesn't suck, Jesse.
Sprays. It doesn't suck. There's the t-shirt.
There's
the t-shirt.
There it is. We'll wrap this segment up and get to our guests.
Let's just move on. I don't know where I was going with that.
We'll figure that out. If you guys know the answer to Alexis's trivia question this week,
please tweet me.
Please tweet, call our number, shoot us an email, whatever. Know what spray thing.
I'm gonna find a picture and tweet out what my dad has one. I just don't know what it's called.
Jim, if you could let us know what your daughter's talking about, that would be much appreciated.
Are you talking about a fogger?
No. It's
you're supposed to be in the house, I feel like you're supposed to be out of the house when
you're.
Are you shooting Lysol into your veins too? Is that another
Not
thing?
Yet. Maybe by the time we record next.
UV rays.
Well, we'll take a quick break because we all clearly need it. But before we get to our next guest, I want to remind you that Soda Stick has all of the awesome merch that you could find. I'm particularly fond of their latest Dino t-shirt, which has
they're so cool.
They've got tees and hoodies, super awesome. Go check those out. And they also have the 8-bit hockey player, which is like a combo of a little Nintendo hockey man. Which I think is pretty sweet. So be sure to go check those out. Slap down that Bar Down Beauties code at checkout for free shipping. We'll be right back. Joining us now, the queen of hockey herself, 3-time Olympian, 2-time national champion with the Golden Gophers, Miss American, based on all of your Team USA exploits, your captaincy there, and boy mom, even more importantly, right? I mean, Miss Natalie Darwitz. Natalie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. That should be a new hashtag, boy mom.
I know. We see girl dad, which is equally as great, but boy mom, I know how that goes, right? How are you holding up with the little kiddos? 4 and 2, you said, right?
Yeah, 4 and 2. Joseph's 4, Zach's 2, and then I got a 10-year-old Springer named Oakley. She's a girl, so
okay.
We're doing good. On the nice days, I wouldn't know it's quarantine, but when we had snow last week with the 2 toddlers, it wasn't pretty. So.
No, definitely tough. What have you been up to since things kind of shut down? Did it end your coaching at Hamlin? How did that affect your guys' season and where you guys were at in the year?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, it didn't really affect us. We had a loss at the end in the MIAC playoffs in overtime, 2-1, and it kind of took us out of the pairwise. So we didn't get an NCAA nomination this year, unfortunately. So. And a week later, they shut it down. So regardless, we probably would have been over, just unfortunately a week too early for us. But a good motivation for next year and a good learning lesson for our players. And we still had a successful year. We were, I think, 18-4-4, just when only 10 teams make it in. And there's this thing called pairwise, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, right.
Wait a minute, how does that team? But, oh well. But so it ended a little bit earlier than we wanted to, but it's unfortunate. Obviously, there's bigger things in life than sports, but obviously, personally, it's an impact to all of us.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something a little bit more exciting than quarantine and seasons ending. Let's talk about how you still hold a lot of records back to like your NCAA days, things like that, where you've been removed from it for a little while. A lot of people have come through since then, and still you hold a lot of those records. Do you think about that often? What is that like to know that some of those things that you've done are still standing to this day and no one's been able to do it since?
Yeah, it's pretty special. I don't really think about them. I don't lay in bed and go, oh, okay, that's cool. But I think to look back, just getting in the Hall of Fame, 2000 and I think was it 19 or 18? Yeah, the U.S. Hall of Fame. Just I think that really allowed me to reflect on my career and how lucky and fortunate I really have been. But those numbers were cool and everything, but I don't really remember them. I remember the memories of my teammates and obviously winning some games was really important and fun, but it was those stupid memories on the bus on a long road trip and the team meals and stuff like that. But someone mentioned to me, like, I think I had like 114 points my junior year at the Gophers, and that's just a crazy number. And we played less games than the college teams do now.
Yeah.
I think I've only played 99 career games, and I think they play like 45 now in a season if they go away. So just to look back and to see what those teams are able to do is pretty special. But like I told people in my Hall of Fame speech, a lot of those points were like second assist breaking.
Hey, count them. You count those though, right?
I would like make a chip off the boards to Chrissy, and she would toe drag all the way down the ice and deke the goalie, and somehow I get an assist. So, but it was pretty special. We had a pretty special line. Me, Chrissy, and Kelly Stevens from Seattle, Washington, and we just tore it up and just had a bunch of fun doing it. So. It's cool to see those records, but the memories of just the little stupid stuff kind of stand out.
Tell us a little bit more about some of those. I mean, and even the players that you were able to play with throughout your career. I mean, all of you women are just so instrumental in growing the game and getting exposure and being phenomenal athletes, man or female. I mean, you guys are amazing to watch. And you talk a little bit about those experiences and the girls that you were able to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I was again really fortunate to come across some amazing people, and I think my first U.S. experience was when I was 15 years old, and I got number 22 to start with, and Cammie Granado was number 21. So to walk into a locker room as a 15-year-old and be sitting next to her, and to be going out and onto the ice right behind her because she was 21 and I was 22. We had a little handshake we did, and those are the memories that I'm going to kind of remember, just a little silly stuff. And then, just stuff with the Gophers of, on the bus, it would be Kelly Stevens in front of me, and I would be sandwiched between her and Chrissy Wendell, and just stuff like that. That's what I remember. But it's the people along the way and the coaches along the way that really made, to looking back, my playing career awesome. And then I can't forget about my high school years. My high school years were a little bit different. It was 7th grade to my sophomore year. But to experience Minnesota hockey in the state is just some of my fondest memories, in playing state tournaments and having the bands at section games in the state tournaments. It's the community all out to the games. We would pack Egan Civic Arena, and that was girls hockey.
Yeah.
It was fun to start that tradition off, and just to see it grow now, it's really fun to know that you played a part in that.
Well, Jesse asked you at the very beginning of the interview about, coaching at Hamlin and kind of how that season went here. And I think a lot of people have different opinions on this. I've heard a lot of different answers to this question. Do you think it's easier as a female to coach females, or have you heard from your male counterparts that it's easier for men to coach men? Or do you think it doesn't really matter? It just comes down to your skill, your knowledge, your experience. What do you think matters most when it comes to that?
I don't know if I have like a strong answer either way. I guess I would go to your third one. I personally don't think it matters.
Yeah.
When I used to do camps and clinics before I had kids, I used to do boys and girls co-ed, and you can definitely see differences. I think girls are really great listeners. And they'll tell you, whatever you tell them, they'll do it to a T. Like, okay, go in the corner, cycle, and they're like, well, where should we cycle?
Yeah.
What part of the boards? And they'll specifically do it. It's like, well, you have to read the play and the opposition and stuff.
It's funny with that. I'm doing a story for USA Hockey Magazine on that exact topic, on how coaching females. And I talked to John Harrington, for instance, about it. And he was like, I mean, they listen so well, but that's kind of the problem is women listen so well. He's like, I have to tell them, like, no, I know I told you to stand there, but I mean, like, go and do this or whatever. And it's so funny to hear, like, the different dynamics that some of these coaches, especially when, between men and women. So it's funny that you say that, because that's what every single one of the coaches I spoke with about that topic said about girls. Yeah,
exactly. And it rings true. And then you have the male side. I think they naturally just have like the mojo, like the head fakes, and girls, for whatever reason, and I don't want to stereotype and say all girls, it's most girls, they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable doing that. It's like almost they feel like they're showing off, or out of their comfort zone. It's like, no, man, do you want so easy? They do it all the time, inside outside fakes. Yeah. And guys kind of just do it naturally and throw their bodies into it, and that's something I want to see females do more. So when I hop on the ice with young kids, it's usually the male demonstrating, hey, look how he's doing that. You can do that too. So I think it's great to put them on the ice together. I think they can each learn a lot. And then you have boys in the corner slapping pucks and dinking around, where the girls get attention. It's like, hey, look at her.
Right.
So I think we can just learn a lot from each other. And I think that also goes into coaching. I think males can learn a lot from coaching females, and females can also, even though we're not given as much of an opportunity, or maybe it's a stigma, we're not on the ice with males as much. And I think it's really important to do that, because I think you can grow as a coach and learn from that. So I think that'd be something I want to do in my future more, is to get on the ice more with men, not just like, squirts and peewees. I want to get on the ice with some college guys at Hamlin and coach them and just see what the differences are. Because I think that would help me grow as a coach, and it might help them too as a player, just to see the different perspective of a female.
Right. Growing up, you played with boys though, right? Was it girls hockey was still an anomaly to have an all girls team, right? How much did that help you develop and grow as a player too, a little bit, to just kind of learn the game and not learn it necessarily as girls hockey, boys hockey?
I will say that a big reason why I was successful later in my career was I grew up playing with the boys. And I don't want to say that if I did grow up playing with the girls, I wouldn't been. I don't think that's the case, but I think they taught me a lot. Not only that, just being the only sole female out there was adversities I would have to overcome and tough skin and to grow as a person and as a player on the ice. But the cool thing about just looking back playing with the boys, I wasn't the girl on the team, and they weren't the boys. We were teammates, and I was I would walk in the locker room just like they would. It wasn't. They wouldn't go, oh, the girl's here. It was Natalie's here. I was their teammate, and they were mine. And I think that was one of the coolest things and I think Chrissy and a lot of other guys, Winnie Brote, would say the same thing about when they grew up with guys, that we weren't treated any differently. We were their teammate number one. And that was just really cool. And I think that's what breaks the stigma of girls can't do this or girls can't do that, is actually being with one. So I know all of my guys who I played with, they would back probably their daughters up, any other female friends. They would say, no, I was with a girl who did it, and she was my teammate. And that's, I think, the coolest thing. And I think that's why I feel strongly about doing camps and clinics and making it boys and girls. Mm-hmm. I'm doing one in August at Trier Rink, a 3-day mini camp, and it's open to boys and girls.
Nice.
I just feel strongly about that it's not men's hockey and women's hockey. It's hockey.
Right.
And that we can learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how your dog's getting in the way, Jesse.
She's just being a pain today.
You want some attention.
I know.
It's crazy how, we've said it a few times, how much the game has changed, and as far as just talent goes, and the way that gender has developed in the game and all of that. Where do you see the state of women's hockey today? What do you, if you were to sum it up in a few words, how do you feel about what's going on? Are they moving in the right direction? Is there any changes that you think could really help push them even further along? How do you kind of assess that situation?
Hopefully people on this podcast, if anyone's listening, have watched Homegrown. And it was an incredible documentary done by Chris Barriere and Jamie Spencer and Ann Butters. And it kind of just talked about how it started and kind of who are the pioneers to move it forward and where it is now. And that's just an awesome documentary to show and display where it has been, where it was, and where it's going. And I'm really encouraged to see where it's growing. I think, when I grew up, again, you would walk into the rink and seeing a ponytail was unique and strange. And now walking into rinks, you just sometimes see girls only on the ice. And I think that's a step in the right direction. I think the overall depth is a lot better. I think there's more girls playing. I do think one thing I talked about on that was I think we're missing the next superstar. I have yet to witness another Chrissy Wendell. So I hope that's coming. There's been people that are really close, like Hannah Brandt and Amanda Kessel and those types of players. But I really think we're craving, if we're not getting another Sidney Crosby in 20 years, that's happening already with who's that guy at Edmonton that's really fast? I can't remember his
Connor
name.
McDavid.
And players like that. If those players didn't come along,
yeah.
So I think we're craving another one here, and we haven't had one in a few years. So that's one thing I think that I would encourage, and I think that starts again with growing up playing with the boys and being tested and seeing that just phenomenal player just take over the game.
And what do you think, what is so important about having that kind of player who can change the game? Because you look at it, you mentioned some of the players on the men's side who are very dynamic and those role models. How does that help the women on the women's side? Obviously, there is some similarities, but also some differences because the women's game is still growing and trying to get to that level of the men's side. So what can a superstar like that really do for the women's side?
Well, I'll go back to Sidney Crosby. What did he do for the sport? What was it, 15 years ago when he came in as a 18 or 19-year-old? What did he basically just more fan base? There was a buzz. People are turn on the TV or go to games now. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. Is you need that superstar or two to create that buzz again. And so that's just something I hope that we see in the next year or two and take us into the next Olympic cycle.
What was it? And again, apologize for cutting out. Doug kicked me off. We're back. Did you guys talk about the gold medal win then for Team USA? Perfect.
No.
Then that's what I'm coming in to do. Obviously you were at the Olympics and you got that silver. What was it like to see the women capture gold at the most recent winter games, and to see them kind of elevate the female game to that next level, like you're saying, to get a little bit more exposure and get some more excitement and conversation about the women playing.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm that they won. And I know I'm not saying this negatively, but the NHL players weren't in that. So that gave them the pedestal to have that limelight. And so it just was a perfect storm of them having, being one of the most talked about sports in the Olympics, and obviously winning gold in dynamic fashion in a shootout. So it was huge. I mean, just going through 3 Olympics and coming up short all 3 for those players, a lot of them I played with, I know exactly the monkey that was off their back and the relief and the joy and the pure happiness that they probably felt of all their hard work coming to fruition. So I was just really excited for them and happy for them, and happy for the sport in the U.S. and that it would hopefully light on fire and continue to have women's hockey grow.
You had played with Jocelyn, right?
Yeah.
Have you seen that shootout move that she ended up winning with, or have you seen her dipsy doodle like that or anything?
I've never seen. No, yeah, I've seen it.
Insane.
Yeah, so it was insane. I mean, the cool thing is a lot of people don't know, she when they played Canada in the preliminaries, she actually got a penalty shot, and she tried a pretty gutsy move and didn't capitalize on it. And then for her to come back in the gold medal game on the line to do it again, then she's just got ice in her veins. So it was pretty spectacular. But that's one of the cool things. You hear all the cheesy quotes. They just didn't pull that move out once. She's probably been working on that move thousands of hours, and finally got the opportunity to do it under the biggest lights. That's a pretty cool story.
Well, and I think, and granted, I'm only 24, so I'm a little bit younger, but to me, it seems like that Olympics and that win and that shootout move by her was the most talked about I had seen women's hockey in my lifetime. As far as not talking about comparing it to men's or not talking about this versus that, but just people being purely excited to see an exciting hockey game, to see a thrilling win, to see such a nasty shootout move win it. I mean, I saw that on Twitter for weeks after that game happened. And I feel like people were just genuinely happy. They didn't care that it was women's versus men's. They weren't doing any comparisons. They were just happy and excited to see a fun hockey game being played. And I remember that. I still think about that from time to time, because I'm like, I feel like that was a really pivotal part of women's hockey history, and just the way the game is advancing. And hopefully, down the road and in years to come, and hopefully not too many years ahead, but hopefully it's soon, there's more games like that and more people are talking about it like that. And so yeah, I think that was a really, at least from my perspective, that it was a really important part of women's hockey history.
Yeah, I think that, and then Kendall Coyne going to the All-Star game and the fastest skater. I mean, I think those two are really pivotal, like you said. And it's kind of like last summer when you watched the World Cup for women's soccer. It's kind of had the same feel, that people weren't talking about men's soccer or women's soccer. They were talking about soccer, and it would happen to be the U.S. women's soccer team. So it was pretty cool.
Do you think the NHL does need to do more things to get involved in the women's game in order to help get that exposure? I mean, because at the end of the day, you do have to admit that people think of the NHL as everything, right, in hockey, and to have that support, how far do you think that would take the women's game and elevating them?
I do think there probably needs to be a partnership. I do think they've already have probably been doing some stuff in the past, and it's great that obviously they invited Kendall to the All-Star game 2 years ago, and then last All-Star game they had a lot of female presence and had the 3-on-3 with the U.S. and Canada team. So stuff like that is what needs to happen, and it's going to take somebody at the top to grab women's hockey and pull it up and give them the opportunities, and that's what they're doing. And the Minnesota Wild is, in my opinion, at the forefront of doing a lot of that. Obviously, I think it's been 5 years now. I think I was the first one to go of practice with the Wild, and then Chrissy went, Hannah went, Lee Steckline, I believe. So that's just initiatives like that, girls hockey weekend, girls hockey day with the Wild. That stuff is just really, really important to get exposure. And so if the NHL, if there's a partnership and they're open to that and then they want to grow the game, and then with NBC having commentary on, AJ Malesko is now in between the benches, and then more female hockey players are joining the booths as well. So, or going in studio with them. So that all is going to have a ripple effect in a positive way. So if those organizations at the top can continue to kind of lend a hand and create those opportunities for us, I think that's what's going to really help and catapult girls and women's hockey.
Well, you talked about Kendall Coyne-Schofield, who has become a huge face in hockey and bringing attention to hockey and specifically women's hockey. She was a member of the Minnesota Whitecaps before she kind of got pushed into, broadcasting for NBC Sports and being a part of the NHL All-Star stuff. She was a big figure for the Minnesota Whitecaps and a part of their championship victory a couple years ago. The NWHL is new to Minnesota here. It's only the second season of it. But that's a big part of bringing that to Minnesota, who loves its hockey so much. And now they're talking about possibly expanding the NWHL into Canada. Obviously, the CWHL folded, I think it was last year, 2 years ago. And Toronto is a city they're talking about. So what do you think about the NWHL, where it's at, and possibly expanding that, getting some more teams into that? The NHL started small, too. There was only 6 teams when they became a league. So a lot of these things take time, but what do you think about the NWHL possibly expanding?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it takes time, and in 2 or 3 years, look what they've done. I mean, just selling out Tria Rink and having a great atmosphere and a buzz around that, and now expanding. Again, I think it's I don't know a lot of the background of the owners of both the NWHL and what's going on in Canada. I think they need to get on the same page and probably collaborate a little bit better, and then get NHL involved. That's all I really know about that. I know there's a little bit of a back and forth going on, but I heard they're trying to expand to Seattle as well with them doing an NHL market. So I think it's great. I think, what people should understand is these players aren't making a lot of money. They're basically making money to basically play.
Most of them, it's their second job. They all have other full-time jobs that they go to. Yeah.
Well, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, when I played, I would have to pay in $1,000 or something like that to play for the Whitecaps. At least now they're not having to fork up money, and they're getting, some mileage pay back and food on the table and stuff like that, which is really important. That's a step in the right direction. I think it's unrealistic, as you kind of talked about, it needs to start in an infancy stage and grow slowly. They can't be expected to, make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, overnight. So it's got to grow, and it's got to grow in the right way. Kind of like I equate it to women's basketball with the Gophers. They started playing in the PAV, and then Lindsay Whalen took over and got them in Maturity Pavilion now. I can't remember what it's called. Williams Arena as well.
Yeah, right. Go with that one.
Now they play in there, and so I think it needs to have that. You got to climb the ladder a little bit, step by step. You can't just all of a sudden jump 10 rings. But they're doing it the right way. I think playing in Tria is an awesome venue, and they're selling that thing out when they get more games on the schedule and make their season longer. Can they still sustain that and sell it out? And hopefully that's the case.
Did Winnie ever circle back with you and keep trying to get you to join the Whitecaps at all? Is she ever bugging you about that?
Yeah, a couple years ago. I mean, she asked if I would, just play in the home games, and I was really intrigued. But we used to do the pond hockey tournament outdoors, and after a weekend, I'm like,
that doesn't seem fair. By the way, that does not seem fair at all. But
I had a stacked team. It was a lot of former Olympians and Gophers. The last 2 years we won it, and then this past winter our schedules just didn't sync up and we couldn't play in it. So
right.
But yeah,
maybe next year, huh?
Maybe next year. But even after that weekend, I'm like, oh my God, I'm old. I'm sore. I can't move.
Yeah. Is coaching the one way that you're still in the game? Like you're still playing? Are you playing in any other pickup games or anything like that? Just coaching keeps you busy.
Just coaching, and I do small group lessons. Just stuff like that. I haven't put on the equipment for a while. Unfortunately, it just hopefully in the future when my kids get a little bit older, I can have a life again.
Yeah.
So right now, being 4 and 2, it's like everyone's like, hey, have you seen this on Netflix or have you watched Michael Jordan? I'm like, no, every time the TV goes on, we have to turn to Paw Patrol. So,
oh, Paw Patrol. Worst.
I don't have a life, but so yeah, right now it's just jumping into drills with the Hamlin team and staying young, I guess.
Yeah. Well, to go off of that, we asked our listeners to send us in some questions for you. We told them that you were going to be on the show. And one of our listeners, Steve Schneider, he said that he has some girls of his own who are playing hockey. And he wanted to know, how do you get more females involved in coaching, especially at some of those younger levels?
Yeah, I've been asked this question a lot, and there's really not an easy answer. Everybody is in their own lives and in a different part of their lives. You know, we try to encourage our players at Hamlin when they become an alumni to try to hook on with, be like a third assistant or something like that, show up once a week to like a U10, hook on with a U10 team or something like that. But usually the stigma is when females, you know, start to have a family, that gets pushed to the side.
Yeah.
So, you know, my story just with Hamlin, that I'm really fortunate enough was I was pregnant with my first kid, and our athletic director at Hamlin asked if I was interested in possibly coaching, and I said, no, I'm having a family. Right. And he's like, well, wait a minute, like let's make this work. I know you want to be a good mom and be at home around your kids and see them grow up. Why can't we do both? Why do I have to have you log in 8 to 5 at the office? Why can't we make this work and find out a creative way? And so I think it takes that. I think it takes people in leadership positions and power positions to get creative, to get females involved, you know? And if you said to a female, you have to be head coach, you have to show up, practice plan, travel, they're probably going to say no. How can you make it creative for them? Hey, can you do Monday nights? Can you do Monday nights, and can you instruct skating or come up with stations or somehow wiggle them in so that they get hungry enough that they want to do more than
Yeah,
right.
You know, that's how it was for me when I got into coaching. I didn't want to get into coaching. My dad thought he knew I was good at it, and he kind of twisted my arm, and he kind of did the same thing. Hey, show up once a week. You can run that practice. Well, that turned into twice a week. Well, that turned into I wanted to be there more. And so I think you just got to get creative to get them involved. And I think if you do the full package, I think it's not going to work out in most people's lives.
Are the boys at the rink often? I mean, you always you see dads and their kids are at the rink and, oh yeah, well, dad was a coach and stuff like that. I mean, are the boys at the rink with you when they kind of know it's probably a little late depending on practice time and bedtimes and stuff like that? But I mean, is that something that you're also, we'll bring them along with?
They are with me a lot at the rink. I mean, when I go during the day just to get stuff done there, they'll come and we're lucky to be at Trio Rink, and the rink staff there is amazing. And they would rather go to the rink and watch the Zamboni. I mean, the guys there they're superheroes when they drive the Zamboni. So yeah, they come to the rink with me all the time, run around the locker room. They'll be at games with their jerseys on, banging on the glass. I don't think they're really watching the game unless the Zamboni comes on in between intermissions, but they're there and they're rink rats and having a lot of fun with it. And it's really fun for me as a mom, just to look across the ice and see them running around. It's really special.
That makes sense, because that was one of our other mailbag questions was, are the Tria Zamboni drivers the best Zamboni drivers you've ever seen? It was one of their drivers that had asked that, I believe. So
I think I know who sent that in. We are so lucky to be at Tria, and those guys are awesome. Reggie, Chad, Mike, Lon, and then obviously Travis running the show. Best rink hands down, and the ice is phenomenal. They all say it's better than the XL ice, and it probably is. So
I think the Wild players have kind of mentioned, I mean, they like practicing there. They enjoy being there at that facility quite a bit too. So I've heard that from other people.
It's phenomenal, and in J term, we usually practice early, so we're kind of go back to back with the Wild, so it's pretty cool to just see them practice, and then they chew up the ice pretty good, and all of a sudden they work on it for like 20-30 minutes, and it's great again. So yeah, they are the best ice guys in all the land.
And then final question before we let you go, what advice would you give to future players, boys and girls alike, as far as how to, take their game to that next level and really focus on. And then also, in addition, playing here in the state of hockey, we had touched on at the beginning how special it is in Minnesota and how that really is nothing like that based on the community models and everything else that goes into it. Just your words of wisdom that you'd like to impart on young listeners and parents alike.
Yeah. Your first question, I think it sounds cliche, but you got to have fun with it. I think once you get older, the level of training can get monotonous. You're going in a weight room, doing the same stuff. Make it fun. When we trained for the 2010 Olympics, we trained with some Minnesota NHLers, Jordan Leopold, couple others, and we trained with Jack Blatherwick, who's just a legend in hockey training. And yeah, would we do the squats and the plyos and stuff like that? Absolutely. But what was cool is he made it really fun and competitive. He would take us to baseline tennis courts, and he would have a tennis pro on the opposite end, and he would hit his balls back and forth. And we probably ended up doing like over 200 sprints that night. If you said, hey, let's 200 sprints,
yeah,
I probably would walk the other way under my breath. But he made it fun for us. We were chasing a ball down. We're competitive, so we wanted to get every ball. Mm-hmm. But we were literally sprinting 10 feet, stopping, turning the other way, sprinting 10 feet, stopping, running up, running backwards. And it was so much fun. We were dripping sweat, clothes soaked, blisters on our feet, but we were walking out of there with a smile on our face, laughing. Mm-hmm. That's how it should be. Yeah. So I think at times it kind of get a little monotonous. Yeah, you have to grind and have self-discipline, absolutely, but also make it fun. Another thing we used to do is just run football routes. Those are another form of sprints and cutting and hockey movements. So I would just say have fun with it. And
yeah. Well, and you mentioned how Jocelyn, she practiced that shootout move. It's a part of being creative, right? And making mistakes, and just like the pond hockey environment is a little bit of that too, right?
Yeah, and she was probably out in her rollerblades doing that move too in her driveway. I remember that's how I kind of grew up, was I was in the driveway pretending I was Neil Broughton or Mike Crawley, and just working on my deeks and going forehand, backhand, top shelf. And I think that's kind of what we're losing these days, and not a better way than we have now on quarantine to go out
yeah,
and back to your, creativity and your imagination, really. So I think that's where a lot of it evolves. If you ask some of the top elite players, is they were doing that when they were young. So go do it. And it doesn't always have to be, I got to do 500 squat jumps today. It's make it fun and competitive. Because if you're with somebody that will make it competitive with you and make it a game, I think that's where the growth happens. Right. And then on the other thing, the Minnesota piece, I'm so glad I'm from here and state of hockey. There's no place like it. The way we rally around just high school hockey and youth hockey in the state, and then the Wild, and then our female sports here. Just with, at the D3 level, we're also packing Tria rink when it's a big series between us and Gustavus or St. Thomas. That rink's full. Mm-hmm. We're D3. Yeah. And I think the stigma has changed. D3 is a really good hockey. It can probably compete with lower end, mid end D1. And so just having that aspect of seeing the D3 game grow since I've been involved in 5 years, it's been really awesome to be a part of that. And so we just love our hockey here. And it's not just grandma and grandpa's coming out. It's people in the community. It's people who are like, I want to see Tria rink, and they go to a restaurant and come to a game, and people who are alumni are coming back. So it's just really fun to be a part of this state and really have everybody in the community just rally around hockey and make it ours. It's really special.
Well, and we're certainly honored to have you as one of our own. We can claim you as our Minnesota queen, so we definitely appreciate
so much crap with that.
I know.
Text me, hey, queen. I'm like,
I was like, should we do king? We could do king. I mean, really, just the ruler of the land, frankly.
Or like duchess, or whatever you want.
Exactly. Just a badass, That's what
there we go.
A badass hockey player. Well, awesome. Well, Natalie, thanks again. We'll definitely have you back on as things. Good luck in quarantine, survival of the fittest with the kiddos, and we'll chat with you later.
Thank you guys so much. It was a pleasure.
And we're back. Thanks again to Miss Natalie Darwitz for joining us. She's awesome. Like, I still love when I asked her legitimately, like, well, so did you ever see Jocelyn's move? She's like, yes, of course I saw Jocelyn's move for the shootout. And it's like, yeah, I guess you did. Like,
I think my favorite part of the interview, which, Jesse, this might have been when your camera cut out for a second. I don't know if you were on for this part. She could not remember the name of Connor McDavid. She was like, that really fast guy from Edmonton. And I thought she was kidding at first, but then I saw the look on her face. I was like, she really can't remember. I was like, that's so iconic. Like, you go, girl.
Speaking of like remembering, did you remember what?
Yes.
The tool is that sprays and doesn't suck, that cleans. What is it?
It's a power washer.
But we don't use those inside. We use those outside.
But have we considered maybe trying to use them inside? I'm saying, like, no, listen.
So aggressive.
Okay, but like, I'm not talking like in your bathroom. Like, I'm talking like an arena setting. You just pull up to the X with your power washer. You like fill it with like hand sanitizer or like squeeze out like the Lysol wipes and just use that.
You want to spray people down with this? Like, I feel like you're gonna have people stand in like a tent and be like, "Here, let me Lysol you real quick with this power washer." You're like taking a person's skin off. Like,
no, I mean when everyone leaves to clean the arena before the next game.
I feel like we have to have a conversation with your buddy Jim over there. Just kind of scold him about how the things he's taught you as a father to his daughter, because this is getting
it's gotten off the rails. Yeah, it's unhinged.
I'm just saying, I've seen it clean houses and it's really useful. Why don't we try it on indoor?
The outside of houses, it's clean because it's so powerful.
But has anyone tried it on the inside? Do we know for sure it wouldn't work? That's all I'm saying.
You know what? I'll let you do it.
You don't have brains.
Go tell Jim that you want to power wash the inside of the house.
Dry, so then the whole place is just flooded, and you're like, "Oh, look at us, we're disinfected," but yet we're flooding.
And the paint's ripped off right now, and be like, "Buddy, I think I want to power wash the inside of the house. Do you think that's a good idea?"
Let us know what he says. Be sure to tweet this interaction out and let us know what he says, and we'll figure that out.
Oh my god. Okay, classic. So anyway,
hold on. I have to do one thing.
Okay.
Hold on. All
that was a disappointed dad sigh.
Yeah, I had to. I have to do that thing.
Oh man.
Speaking of more hilarious Alexis, it's time for.
Just in case you didn't get enough.
It's time for.
Oh wait, there's more.
There's more. We got more for Dear Diary with Alexis.
The Wild are on fire, including the first goal I talked about. They scored 3 goals in 2.5 minutes. Let's enjoy the happiness now. It can only get worse from here. And I was right. It did get worse.
Just epic. And that's Dear Diary with Alexis. Beautiful. Again, another round of applause.
Are we ever going to do a positive of one of those?
Find a positive of the Wild, and
this
yeah,
is
then
like
we
2009.
Can
There wasn't many good things going on in 2009.
Fair.
No.
2008. Yeah. Bar down beauties, power washing, and angry diary segments,
and
gardening,
yeah,
and a little bit of hockey.
Just winning,
and maybe Olympian mixed in between.
And
Natalie
an
Darwitz,
Olympian.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, Natalie's like, why did I join this podcast? No. A big thanks again to her for hopping on. Thanks to Soda Stick for making us awesome and legitimate. We're gonna skip that word. Making us legit to quit.
Legit is literally not a word though. So you went from one not word to another not word.
Shut up, Alexis.
Thanks
to the power wash companies. And don't forget to, if you liked this, if you actually listened to this full episode all the way to the end and got this far, congratulations.
Power wash hot take of 2020.
Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, share our podcast, subscribe to all of our podcast channels. Feel free to give us a call on that phone. Fred, hit us with that number. What's that number? You don't know it? Okay. It's going to be scrolling down at the bottom of your screen, so that's good. And
I wasn't ready.
Well, I know I threw him off. It's fun. It's a game.
Just insert audio.
612-405-9409.
Good job. Thanks, Fred, for knowing the number. Appreciate that. And thanks, Alexis, for bringing the fun. So
hey, no
we'll be back with another hot episode next week. Hopefully, you guys come back too. So take care. Stay beautiful. We'll talk to you later.